What's going on, Jarvis Underground, Jarvis Nation? Darby here with Leibel Sternbach. Leibel is the founder of yieldsforyou.com. It's a financial education company. He is a financial advisor and the author of the Amazon best-selling books Authenticity and Living with Financial Anxiety. His advice has been featured in Forbes, Investment News, Reader's Digest, Think Advisor, USA Today, and many other publications. And Leibel has joined us here today as a graduate of the 7-Day Book Challenge, one of the first ones we put on earlier on this year. Wrote a book inside of our challenge and has been using it ever since then to grow his business. He's going to share with us today a little bit of background on himself and what got him even into Jarvis in the first place. And I'm super excited to just kind of see where this conversation's go. It's going to be kind of free flowing. We're going to jam on a lot of things, book related and otherwise. And so, Leibel, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've come a long way since the early days of Jarvis earlier on this year and the makings of the first 7-Day Book Challenge, which we're in our final one this week, actually, officially, the November Challenge. It's a great group that we're going through. And it just takes me back to all the people that have used Jarvis for the power of creating a book and not only just writing a book, but using it for something intentionally. And that's what I know that you've done over the course since you've graduated the challenge. So before we dive into all the fun Jarvis stuff and the how to market the book and how you went through it, you are in the financial services business right now. Can you give me a little bit of background, maybe some more detail about kind of what got you into this business and then what led you to Jarvis in the first place? And kind of we'll take things from there.
Yeah. So how I got into finance is kind of a funny story. I was running marketing. I built out the marketing department for a marketing company, and then they asked me to take it over. And this was right before the housing crash, 2007. So we were doing marketing for all of these mortgage brokers, and then all of a sudden they disappeared on me. The banks froze loans, and nobody knew what was going on. So I had to find something, right? Some new source of income. And financial advisors at the time, specifically, people who were selling annuities, they were doing great because they were offering, guaranteed returns, zero loss. Everyone just lost 40%, 50% of the market. Eventually, I was like, well, why am I teaching all these advisors how to do it? Let me get my license and start doing it myself. And so I started doing that. But one of the things, you think for a marketer that I'd be good at, copywriting, which I can write persuasive copy, but writer's block is something that's always challenged, right? There was something that they said that was like, we have this 5-step process. We have this, and they often would come up with a unique name for it. But they had that, and that was a hook, and it was like, people would look at that and say, well, I can't get that anywhere else, right? And so when I started down this journey of becoming a financial advisor and building my own practice, I was trying to figure out, what is my hook? And I'd done marketing for hundreds of advisors. I trained them, coached them. And like, we all say the same thing. So how do you stand out when we're all saying the same thing, even if we believe that we're somehow different? You got to have something unique. And so the way that I got clarity of, okay, what is my unique value that I'm bringing to the marketplace? What is it that I do that no one else really does? I sought that clarity by writing a book, because when you write a book, you got to be really crystal clear about that. You got to be crystal clear of where is your avatar, your customer starting out, and where are you taking them to, and take them along that journey. And so writing that book gave me clarity on that. I knew a lot of the pieces, but I didn't know how to fit it together and then how to present it in a way that, was easy and catching and you can sum it up in one sentence, right? So writing a book for me was, it gave me that, and then it gives me something that I can hold and say, this is what I do. This is the value that I provide. Whether you work with me or not, here, you can go have this in your life and learn this.
Did Jarvis help you come up with that philosophy and kind of tying it all together? That's a pretty big step in a lot of cases, right? It's like, how do I clarify this message? How do I offer something so distinctly different? Was there any like aha moments when you were writing with Jarvis that were like, oh?
There was a lot of aha moments. This is what I love about Jarvis, is that you'll put something in there and I'll ask it open-ended questions and it will give the most interesting responses. And the thing is that the responses that it's putting out are based on what the internet and the public have described, right? It's learned off of our behavior. So it means that there's a marketplace for these people who are having these concerns. And so there was a lot of aha moments where it was like I read it and I was like, that really resonates with me. That's really a problem that I've heard people talking about, but I've never heard anyone address.
When you're getting quoted in the media, you mentioned that like it's a lot of people answering the same question, and how do you really stand out there? Was there something like how do you even go like in your industry, with the financial services? Like I'm sure there's like parallels in how someone from another industry in real estate could use the same process in getting quoted in the media because they have a book. Can you kind of share a little bit about how you go about that?
Yeah, and the truth is that financial services, what works in financial services, will work in any service-based industry,
Mhm.
because ultimately, in a service-based industry, we are service, and our jobs as financial advisors, while there's the planning and there's the investment management and those pieces, what we really are is customer service, right? We're about making them feel understood and then helping them solve their problems using the tools that we have available, right? Which, whether you're going to an accountant or a lawyer or a real estate agent, right, that's what they do. So if we're getting quoted in the media, right, helpareporter.com quoted these other places where reporters are seeking out experts. So I will look for where the reporter is looking for a source, and they're a lot of reporters nowadays, because of the amount of content that they're required to produce because everything's online, they have to produce an insane amount of content and it needs to be relevant. The more that you can provide the reporter, the more likely you are to get quoted. So I use that in my favor. So I'll use Jarvis to answer a lot of the questions, fill in, basically half write the article for them, and tell them where they should go with it. So that's number one. And then number two is I'll then tie that back into my philosophy in my book, right? So whether I'm doing it on the marketing side, which is authenticity, and it's about being true to yourself and developing real relationships with people, or it's the living with financial anxiety that if you don't take care of that, no amount of financial planning will really take care of the fact that we're human beings and we need to address the human nature. So I'll tie whatever I'm pitching into one of those two, right? And then I'll end it with, and I talk about this in my book, blah blah blah, and my bio at the end, my signature, and this goes out with every email to every prospect. I have my name, founder, my position, right? And then I've got, my top credential I want people to see. But then I've got, one or two paragraphs that are my bio, right? Part of like what you said at the beginning, how you introduced me. Every single email has that, and that's how I sign off the pitches. So when a reporter is looking at that, they're like, "Wow, this guy gave me, everything that I need to write this article, right? I can go running, right?" Which is why we love Jarvis, right? Because it gets us off the ground. And then I give my credibility of why should you listen to me? Well, why should you quote me? Because I got a unique perspective, right? I published a book, so I'm not just somebody with an opinion. I'm somebody with a book with an opinion, right? So other people, right? And then I've been quoted in the media by other people, and this is why you should think it's important. I've got the education listed in there. I've got all the other media appearances. I got what I do. So they look at that and they go, oh, I'm not going to get in trouble for quoting this person, and he really helped me out. Just like writing a book, the value of the pitch isn't the fact that I get quoted. That's secondary to me. The real value is that for me, I now have a blog. I now have a podcast. I now have, marketing copy, collateral that I can use in all my marketing that I know people are thinking of. What I do is I take that pitch, right? And I'm writing this for my readers, right? As well as for the reporter. And I'll turn that into a blog post, right? Or an email. But I'll start it off and I'll say, hey, so-and-so from whatever magazine asked, and this is what my response was. So even though I didn't get quoted, I get credibility from it, right? It's that instant authority. Like, who are you that, reporters are asking you questions? Anyone could do it, but not everyone does it, right?
And you're using Jarvis to just answer the questions that the reporters, serving you up on a silver platter to
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, and it's not again, it's not just answering the question because you got to keep in mind they're writing an article, right?
Right.
So you need to provide them, right? Why is this, what, not just to answer the question, but you need to, the beginning of why that question is important,
Hmm.
right? What is the things that you should consider? And then here is the answer. And if you want to learn more about it, right, this is where you're going to go. And I'll give the reporter resources, and I'll tell them, hey, go check out XYZ, or I talk about it in my whatever, right? You have that kind of follow up because then they've got to write 2,000-3,000 words off of that, and I'm giving them 200-300 words.
I mean, I would, yeah. I mean, that'd be a sweet recipe. Actually, maybe we could work together on putting something like that together, and it would probably help me actually respond back to all these reporters a lot faster. I never even thought about using Jarvis to just answer all their questions and build like kind of a blog post response to it. Find them on Help a Reporter Out. Use Jarvis to answer their question. Give a little background why, what else to consider. Here's the answer to the question. Here's some links to back it up. And oh, by the way, I'm the best-selling author of this book. You should quote me.
Yep. Yeah, and here's all my credentials. Here's everything that you'll need in order to publish me, how to quote me, right? Just like I provided for you, right? It's like you get a full package, and you look at that, and you're like, well, of course I'm going to use this guy. And then what happens? Even if they don't quote me in that article, they'll use part of my content, and they'll try to quote me in another one.
Other than getting quoted, are there any other avenues that you've used your book or found it helpful in like opening a door?
So there's getting quoted. I've had 2 features done, 2 full feature articles done on that. Both because people asked. One was because someone asked, what was my favorite business book? So I quoted myself, and they called me back and they're like, "Well, we want to do a full feature on you." So that worked out good. But other stuff than that. What I find, and part of this my experience, part of this my client's experience, right? Because before going down this journey of writing my own book, I helped clients who had written books and promote it and build it into their sales process. And when you make that book the central core of your sales process, it completely makes everything really smooth, right? Usually as part of the sales process, you have this whole education phase where you got to get people to know who you are, what you do, how you help, what makes you different, and then you got to educate them on your philosophy, right? And then only then maybe you have the opportunity of getting them into an appointment, getting them to want to meet with you and talk shop, right? With the book, you just go out there and say, hey, do you want to learn this process that I developed that solves this need, right? And so it's instantly, oh, you're something different. You get that instant credibility. You don't have to fight for it. I used to get a lot of questions of why should I trust you kind of things, like people challenging the things that I say. I don't really get that anymore. They just accept, and they come saying, what do you think about this? What do you think I should do? The vast majority of people I talk to, they're just like, hey, what do you think I should do? And they're like taking notes as I'm talking, but I never had that before. It used to be, well, I don't really think, and what about this? And what about what so-and-so said on the TV yesterday? It's like, they don't, but I have a book. This is what I say in my book. So I'll be honest, I assume that nobody reads my book. I just take that as a given that nobody's going to read it. If they do read it, they will realize that I'm reusing all the content. So most people I don't think are going to read my book. Right? I mean, I'm just being realistic, right? Even though it's short, they're not going to. So what I've designed it is that when you read the table of contents, you should get the overall idea. And I assume that if anyone's going to be serious, they're probably going to flip through and read the headlines. So the headlines in each chapter tells a story, right? And so if you just read the headlines, in the entire book, you'd get my story, right? And my philosophy. And then I reuse that content everywhere.
Yeah, I think it accomplishes the same thing either way. Like some people are going to read the book and the same thing gets accomplished, but at the end of the day, it's like, here's the cliff notes. Like you get it. No need to fight anyone that doesn't want to convince somebody to have to work with you. It shouldn't be like pulling someone's arm off to make it happen.
Yeah, and you could be the best, most amazing salesperson in the world, and you can get them as clients, but you're not going to want them as clients. So, having written 2 books now, the first one I would consider a complete disaster. It definitely, was is not as professional as this. I think that what I've learned going through just the writing process and then going through the challenge. Number one, when I write my next book, I'm going to write it with the intention that it's going to be my marketing collateral. That I'm not going to just use it as a book. I'm not just going to use it as a lead magnet, but literally as I write each chapter, I'm going to then take the extra 20 minutes as I wrote after I wrote it to break it out into 3 blog posts and to break it out into a lead magnet or two, and to break it out into quotes and posts for social media because you're doing all that creative work. If you just take a little bit more time to do that up front, right? All of a sudden you have 6 months, a year, 2 years of marketing collateral, and you don't have to think about it. For me, that's what I'm going to do. I do a million things, and I just don't have the time to do all the be consistent about writing a blog and doing all the marketing I should be. But I can do a 2 week chunk of writing a book, right? Of spending those few hours a day to write a book. That's number one. Number two, Brandon Keene. He does a great job in his book to his website to register for his free stuff and for his mailing list and whatever. I mean, it's literally like you can't go more than 2 pages without him just, casually putting in there. And if you want more information about this, if you want my blueprint of how to do this, go to my website, right? If you have any questions as you're implementing this, just email me, right? And so when you go through with the intention of, I want to give people enough information that they can absorb this, they can see how it will impact their business, they can start to implement some changes, but there's going to be more that they're going to want that's not going to be in the book. And I'm going to provide that on my website where I'm going to capture their information. And the challenge really helped me narrow that down. Going, if I had that information beforehand, if I had taken, however long it takes to figure that out, and then I was like, okay, now I want to write about it, I could have easily done that within the 7 day challenge. I probably could have done it in 3 days. The hard part is that intellectual part of figuring it out. But the good news for anybody who's doing sales on a regular basis, you already know that, right? Because that's a conversation you have. All you need to do is take your sales conversation and write it into a book. Outline what are the talking points that you need to take a person through. And that's literally every chapter that you're going to write about. What are their objections, right? How do you counter those objections? What are the things that really cement in their mind? This is why I should work with this person. This is why I should make these choices. And really, your book should end on the note of, well, if you want this transformation, you need to make a choice, A or B, right? And if you want to choose A, which is working with me, this is how you get about doing it. And if you want B, here's your resources for doing it. Do it on your own or whatever that other choice is.
Yeah, and then that's, I guess it's the website, right? That's the expert hub that you're driving people back to, and your book can literally populate that entire site, right? That you're
Yeah.
doing, or it can just be a simple resource guide. I guess, what did you lead people back to in your second book when you
So
put that one out there?
in my second book, I lead them to. So I kind of I go a little more in detail than I want to. And this is again, me learning of that when I write my third book, right, I'm going to go into less depth because I gave them too much of the how to do it and not the why you should do it. And so what I really want to do and what I really want to do is lead them to the conclusion of, if I want to do this, right, go opt into my website where I'll give you the free resources and point you to, here's all the things that you're going to need to do it yourself. Or I can, and what I want people to do is opt into my training, my course, where I'll teach them how to do it, and it'll be, an intensive, learning process for them. So you need to write the book from the emotional standpoint of where you're going to take them to, they understand the problem, they feel like they can solve it, but they don't quite know how. In either path, right? Either path, you're going to be at the other end. The one path is go do it yourself, right? And I'm going to give you the resources to do it, which basically is come to my website, opt into my list, and I will market to you long term so that when you finally you get to your darkest hour of failing on that first challenge, right, and going on the hero's journey, that I'll be there to help support you, right? And if you get to the finish line and you are one of the few people who can do this yourself, I will, applaud you and be your greatest cheerleader. But if you're like the vast majority of people, right, who can't do it on their own and need an expert to either do it for them or guide them, right? Then here's the other path that again is going down my route.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And, like the vast majority of people are going to need additional help, right? Like that's why,
Yeah.
the right coach at the right time, solving the right problem can like create a really big breakthrough in a lot of ways. And so like, the book and just any of your messaging, right? And your philosophy is positioning you as being able to help support people at that right time. Um, and just being there with the offer whenever it makes the most sense to. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
And again, right, your job, your goal is to support them, right? You
Mhm.
want them to succeed. So whether that means doing it themselves or that means working with you, you're going to support them either way. But the book isn't designed to solve those problems. That's off the book.
Leibel, thank you so much for sharing your process here, and I'm really keen to chat about that reporter pitch sort of recipe. I think a lot of people in our community would get a kick out of that too, especially if it helps people get quoted
Yep.
from reporters. If someone wants to kind of reach out to you and maybe connect with you, learn about what you do in the financial services industry a bit more, or just reach out, say hey, say thanks for connecting here, where can people find you at?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can also email me, Leibel at yieldsforyou.com. The number 4, the letter U.com.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you all again for showing up. Leibel, thank you so much for sharing that. It's been really cool to see the evolution of the book, and hope to see you, if not January, some point in another challenge, getting the next book out.
Yep. See you then.